the hearing. Russia is doing correctly. He said, okay, produce evidence, if you have evidence.
But the US has presented evidence. There's the indictment against the trolls. They've listed names. They put activities out there.
We don't believe that. They don't believe that they have evidence. It's just the anti-Russian hysteria, the Democratic Party and the so-called deep state. They cannot, they cannot bear the election of Mr. Trump as President of the United States and blame Russia for the defeat of Hillary Clinton. That's all.
You talk about how Russia is
Sounds familiar. Straight from the horse's mouth. A long, long time ago, there was a little boy. And he decided to tell a story while he was brewing coffee. So I guess we'll see how that works out. Hold on just one second. My franticism just isn't quite enough for me to push the kind of hours I have. Oh, there we go. Looks like coffee. So, this boy, that'd be the little boy in the picture, or maybe, no, a different boy, perhaps. I don't know. Who knows? He was born to a fine religious family in a time right before many fine religious families would come to fall to corruption and hypocrisy. But having the benefit of being born into this family just before this time, he received a proper biblical education, quote unquote, as it were. A scholarly young lad, if there ever was one. And as he grew older, he began to remember dreams from this period. Dreams that seemed to have meaning. Dreams that seemed to warn of a challenge that humanity itself would face. Dreams that told him who he was and why he knew these things. And there came a time when he had grown, after he had faced many challenges and gained many experiences, that this world that had become lost and stricken with strife and wars and rumors of wars and ever increasing chaos. The people started to sense a change. They started to sense the end. They started to sense the return of their prophet. And they looked upward in the skies for signs and wonders. And many of them said, "Surely this is a sign that he is returned." And at that time, the man who was the young boy began to prophesy, began to see things more clearly than anyone else, began to see that all of his dreams from his childhood, everything that he knew from his very youngest years, the knowledge that, if anything, God wanted him to take with him from his former life, this knowledge that unpacked in dreams, he began to see it and so much more, and began to see that humanity faced great peril. And he began to warn of the coming darkness. And from that darkness spread from the land of our enemies would come a king, an unholy defiler, who would be sent to our land to usurp our throne, to cast aside our governance, to disregard our rule of law, to defile our very way of life, and cast fear into the hearts of our children. Fear of the world. Fear of the incompetence of their parents. How could they let the defiler come and rule over them on behalf of the darkness that surrounds them? One thing's for sure. They won't listen. They don't see where it's coming from. They don't know the danger that they face. And because of what he saw, because of what he understood that they did not, he began to warn people. But still, they didn't want to see where the darkness had spread from. They didn't want to see why the iniquity in their hearts had caused their blindness. So he performed wonders, miracles, signs in the heaven. See, they were looking to the heavens, and they knew that this was the time. But still, they would not see. And all the miracles, all the wonders, because, not of the form that they took, but because of the warning for which they were demonstrated in the first place. Even after those warnings became clear as day, even after what he had seen and prophesied, because of who he was, had come true, even after we knew that that unlikely thing had for certain occurred in our very midst. Even though we knew that he saw it coming. There we were, stuck with this king from the foreign land. But what he saw, we did not deny because it didn't make sense. We did not deny because he had no evidence. We denied it because he claimed to be the one that we were expecting. And even though his truth had become clear, and even though it had been painted on the sky, even though it was plain as day to see, people didn't want to listen about the darkness that was spreading. Because the light just wasn't bright enough for them. But if someone doesn't listen to a warning, because the person giving the warning claims to be the begotten of God, and then that warning comes true, and that person who was warned suffers for it, it is obvious that this is a test and that they have failed. But I ask you, if someone comes warning you, and they are not the begotten of God, even though they think they are, maybe they're just a crazy person, but you don't listen to their warning, and it comes true, and you suffer for it, was it still a test? And did you pass? Or did you fail? So anyways, good Good morning, good afternoon, and good blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Lost-Begotten's metaphorical slideshow of science. Slideshow? Yeah, I kind of like was starting to burp while I said that, and kind of happened that way. I apologize. I'm gonna move on now. So anyways, there has been plenty of times throughout history in which it seems a man of God comes along and people call him a crazy person, and then everything he says comes true. And one would think that in the time of the internets, of educated people, the information age, as it were, that people would be able to read things and learn from them. You know, like things that happened before so that they don't happen again. Oh, yeah. And it is for this reason that you have the ability to identify a true prophet. And it is for this reason that you once understood what a true prophet was. Someone who can reveal God's plan used to be considered to be an incarnation or an aspect or at least a face of God. That's where the idea of the Christ comes from. But once upon a time, Christianity understood that this would not be possible unless God the Almighty, who exists beyond the state of masculine or feminine, in order to exist in this plane and have communion with us, would become male and female. Now, I have demonstrated that what has been lost about true belief is essential to resisting the peril that you face, is essential to preserving your way of life. But most of all, it's essential to actually changing the hearts and minds of people you perceive to be your enemies. People who have been enslaved by deception. Hold on one second. I need to add a little water to this bottom tank here. Keep on getting distracted by that low level down there. That is not right. So, how are you doing, Mr. Conway? Thanks for journeying. Go ahead and dump that nasty fucker, and now I have to wash my hands. Okay. Anyway. Conway? You there, dude? We a bit tipsy, are we? So, it's pretty fascinating to think about. Just how long this particular struggle has gone on. 7 years. Fell asleep, eh? Was my slideshow not that entertaining? Oh, good for you. I was kind of hoping you'd moderate. Man, back in the early days of YouTube, it was all about strange events, signs and wonders, and UFOs, and who the fuck is coming or taking over from within, or whatever. People were trying to, on one side, reassure each other and say that clearly this is a sign that some paradigm shift is going to happen. Others were saying that Christ would return. And many were trying to use this hysteria to redefine the very meaning of Christ. Oh yes, at this time that it seems that Christ is going to return, we're going to make it so that it's just the definition of Christ. Oh yes, Christ has come, and now you're all Christ. Sure, okay. And this wave of psychological manipulation occurred at the time when humanity had become very, very ripe for the harvest. You see, throughout the 1990s, those who might consider themselves interested in the next level of awareness, interested in knowledge that most people don't bother with. People who considered themselves watchmen. People who considered themselves shepherds. people who just simply said, I have the IQ, the free time, and the interest. I'm gonna use it to just keep an eye on things and keep my friends informed here and there when I can. Those people all had a favorite show in common back in the 1990s. One TV show that all of these people watched. Whether you were a Christian, an atheist, a Wiccan, Republican, Democrat, didn't matter. If you were an American of a cognizant age during the 1990s, and you were interested in awareness, your favorite TV show was The X-Files. Now, if one were to consider the following postulate, hypothetically, the answer would be obvious. Okay, and that is, if the X-Files were intended as a form of psychological manipulation, what were the objectives and the effects of that show, assuming it were a propaganda mechanism, assuming it were designed to be for an effect? Well, it's pretty simple. It would make people obviously quite paranoid of the United States government. It would make people feel like if they wanted to fight the system, they would have to be very qualified, and it would still be very difficult. And it would make people think that there was something, nobody knows what. Could be aliens, could be interdimensional beings. You only really get those two choices though, right? You know, if they're here and they have been for a long time, they're not what Christians understand them to be. Christians are just naive. They're something older, something that speaks Babylonian, and yeah. And that something, whatever it is, as long as it's been here, they are now secretly trying to take over the United States government. X-Files is just a fucking TV show. Right. I know. But to people on YouTube, do most people know? That you don't have to, be an FBI inside agent to have a voice in this world, that you don't face unreasonable odds, or you shouldn't face unreasonable odds. It isn't your government trying to suppress your opinion. People in the FBI and places like that are allowed to go where the evidence leads. There's nobody that comes and shuts down investigations. Like the Mueller probe, for instance. Well, congratulations, Conway. You kept with your instincts. Because I remember having the instinct about the music and the show. But I succumbed to it, and I wound up getting interested in it. But then again, that is after the point where I decided consciously to immerse myself in the whole demonic scene. I'm just going to acknowledge that that's nothing but an excuse. But I learned what I learned. And I've, obviously learned what I've learned about this world to make myself have more common ground with the people who would need my help, But anyways, what was I just talking about? Shit. Yeah, X-Files. The implications of that show should be untraceable in the effect that they've had on reality. It should just be just a show. Yeah, it gave me nightmares too. In fact, I think when I started to wonder about the interdimensional aspects of it and whether or not those were demons is when I started to really have, like, the Eden War dreams, the Enoch War dreams, the first Dragon War. Whatever. That'd be like Dragon War 0.5 or something. So, it should be that there aren't a bunch of people who are paranoid that X-Files is true. There shouldn't be a bunch of people on the internet trying to track down the secret alien conspiracy controlling our government. But then, we all thought David Duchovny was Canadian, when in fact he was born in St. Petersburg, Russia. And did you ever notice how many reporters and comedians and celebrities are Canadian? And all of them, those Canadians, have promoted and perpetuated anything and everything but proper Christianity over the years. Anything and everything but centrism and stewardship. Anything and everything, as long as it's a straw man argument against true faith, against true Christianity. So, at the point when we were all looking on YouTube for the world to end, waiting to see on the news, looking outside at the sky, watching for UFOs at night, we had a decade of not just the X-Files, but History Channel shows about, is there any truth to the X-Files, and Area 51, and Roswell, and the Discovery Channel, and the Learning Channel, and the Sci-Fi show was, sci-fi doing sci-fi stuff, and maybe it's real, and maybe it's not, blah, blah, blah. And then we had a series of psychological shocks as a country. Ancient Aliens, right? That show. Jeez. Before that became real popular, right as that became popular, before this whole idea became a reality to us, we suffered in large part as a country, at least the people who were awake and cognizant at the time, a series of psychologically impactful events. One was simply the turn of the century. Okay? That was a psychologically impactful event. I just muted the microphone so I could fart. That may or may not turn out to be a psychologically impactful event. I'm trying to reduce the impact. So, I came from one of those very religious, church-going, Southern-type families, right? And, there were radio stations and entire just groups of people in Houston, especially, that thought Jesus was going to come back and rapture us all. And we were just waiting for the world to end, kind of. Just supposed to do our best throughout our daily lives so that when judgment came, we would get to fly up in the clouds to meet Jesus. And boy, when the turn of century came around, everybody was just kind of, fuck it, the world might end. And a lot of people were doing a whole lot of drugs. A whole lot of alcohol. And partying like it was 1999, son. Because it fucking was. And then One morning we woke up. And the Big Apple was smoking. Our nation had been attacked, and we had no idea who was attacking us. And while the vast majority, well, not so vast, but still the majority of people, were all too desperate to grasp and cling on to the most rational and seemingly harmless explanation for these events. People far away from us went through great efforts to make these attacks, and now we have to go to where they are, and we're better at it, and everything's going to be fine. You gotta fight them over there so they can't get to us here, right? It's all very comforting. But people who had watched the X-Files, people who had watched the Learning Channel and the History Channel and seen Roswell stuff and Ancient Alien stuff, and maybe even the documentary about the CIA and the Mujahideen, they began to suspect. They thought something just wasn't right. And from that point on in this country, there's been this psychological divide between people who are willing to think about stuff and consider stuff, and then people who mock anyone who questions the status quo while professing themselves as independent thinkers, often comedians, often from Canada. And if they're not comedians from Canada, aren't they just those same kind of people? Or they've taken this new form. These people that have been brainwashed over the years by these conspiracy theorists on one side, by these televangelists and Fox News media pundits on one side, and then pushed into thinking that the mainstream doesn't accept them, doesn't accept their beliefs, doesn't accept especially all the conspiracies that they know. And then they get pushed into a corner where they perceive it as a result of their beliefs. You just don't see, you bunch of liberals, because you're godless. And I know because I'm a Christian. Because only Christians can access the YouTube channels I watch, or something like that. So this plan of pseudo-liberal intellectualism, mocking faith, and trying to push people of faith into a defensive position, at the same time occurs while infiltrators and con artists are influencing faith in the wrong direction. And then it becomes Fox News people and conspiracy theorists, because these people got pushed so far that it's no longer the advice of the televangelist that is popular. It's now Alex Jones and InfoWars and wolves in sheep's clothing 2.0. And then in place of the good old communist comedians and pseudo-scholars, you get your socialist troll bots and your Bernie babies. And then at this point where everybody feels like it's about to happen, everybody feels like Christ is going to come back, or we're all going to wake up, there's going to be a paradigm shift, the world's going to be destroyed. 2012, man, dude, something's going to happen. It's 2012, the Mayan calendar says it's going to happen. After all this shock we've been through, our nation at war, our nation attacked, our nation divided, suffering from information overload, as most people finally, in many cases, en masse, join the internet, acquire social media accounts, acquire cell phones capable of text messaging and media messaging, push notifications. The more misinformed we became, the more we felt like we had evolved and become more aware. And then before 2012 comes around, as people had started to speculate about it, but the hysteria was marginal. It was just an intellectual thing. It was just a Watchmen sort of thing. More of a hobby, you know? An interest. But we could feel, at least those of us who still considered ourselves to be true Christians and truly spiritually awakened people, could feel the hypocrisy tearing the world apart, tearing our nation apart. And then we had a chance for redemption. We all saw it. We all thought. Except for those who just couldn't accept his skin color. We all thought that Barack Obama represented a chance for America to move forward. End its older, unrighteous ways, and fulfill the potential that our founding fathers had envisioned for this country, and thus lead the world into a new era of prosperity and peace and understanding. That could have happened. We had the chance. It was right there in front of us. And it was a test for Christians. Indeed. I would sure still like to meet him one day. Like, I've never wanted to meet a celebrity before, by any means. But I want to talk to Obama as bad as most people want to talk to me. Whether they know it or not. I'd really like to have a, like a 4-hour sit-down public forum discussion with Barry. I think that might be probably one of the most productive conversations for posterity that we could have at this point. Yeah, the pint of Guinness, huh? He's a good man, wasn't he? Guinness. I don't really drink beer much, man. I will fuck up a can of Guinness. And then burp really loud and ask for another. And I will continue to do so until I find myself amused by the little ball inside. Right? Fucking Flanagan's in the French Quarter. One good thing about New Orleans that you'd appreciate if you ever wound up moving out this way is we do in fact have Irish pubs. And St. Paddy's Day is a big fucking thing in New Orleans. Very much Irish. And like Gaulish Lombardies, basically. There's like an Irish-Italian thing that just fascinates me. Almost as much as it would fascinate me to just get Obama talking, analyzing out loud, basically. My theories, or whatever you'd call them, on how our society has become so fucked up. You know? White man and a black man talking about it. Baby Jesus and a former president talking about it. Very wild spiritual person and a very grounded, down-to-earth professor. Respecting each other's points of view. And talking about everything that humankind needs to understand to get their shit together. Like, I hope people realize that that's all I really want to do, is talk to the leaders of this world and make sure that they're not working against their own interests. Make sure that people that don't trust each other can find ways to do so. Because there is little time left. One way or another, you're gonna kill yourselves. There are so many different ways right now. Just, you know, the paths of destruction before you should not have so many optional lanes. But they do. If you don't kill the oceans and die from disease, you'll poison the oceans and die from oxygen deprivation. Or you'll just keep breeding and inefficiently using the planet until there's nothing left. Or the struggle between East and West will end with the victory of the East, at which point all of these people hungry for power will have no check from rational people. And the world will be filled with dead people. There will just be war after war after war after war. When all of the Horde's enemies are gone, who will they fight? Each other. And that's if the East and West don't result in a nuclear holocaust. Don't just irradiate the entire surface of the planet. Set fire to all the cities. Let the ash cover the earth. Again. out of the east. The lightning that the Son of Man will resemble, or shall call, or shall something. Out of the east, and shall shineth even unto the west. Here's the full. It's just the background. For as the lightning the light the power of God, the truth, or just, the lightning. That camera is facing north. The lightning was coming from east to west. Lightning. Fair enough. Same thing on this video. But let's look at it metaphorically. The lightning, powerful destructive force, the truth, something, shall come out of the east and shineth even unto the west. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. So it's a time of what? What's happening here? What is this describing? It's describing two distinct periods, actually. It's describing two things simultaneously. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, those days of the future, now those days of the past. What happened after those days of the past? We had the Dark Ages. We had the return immediately after the death of Christ. And then we had the Dark Ages. But if this is for the future, if this is for this time, then in this time, we should have a tribulation followed by an eclipse of the sun, and then an eclipse of the moon. And we'll know it's the right eclipse of the sun and moon because of the next sentence, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And let me go ahead and open up my Bible and continue where it cuts off. Let's see, 24. I think that's Matthew. About to find out. No, must be John, maybe Luke. I'll try John first. There's that many books in John. Yeah. Okay, what am I doing wrong here? Matthew 25. I was on the wrong page of Matthew. I was on the next page. Matthew 24, 30. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and all of the tribes of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the earth to the other. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation, the people alive then shall not pass. Those people that were alive then shall not pass until all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. And that's a configuration between Noah and Noel, implying the Christhood of Noah. For as in the days that were before the flood, when they were eating and drinking and marrying, and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, one shall be taken, the other left. Two women shall be grinding together in the mill, one shall be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, ye do not know what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come. But know this, if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? This is getting kind of random. Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. And there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Oh, I always love the weeping and gnashing of teeth. So what does all this mean? Well, first of all, it means that if you're expecting this to happen word for word today, you're not expecting the right thing. You're not reading the words that are written down here. So what you're left with is a metaphorical interpretation of this, because if Jesus needs to come back again, it's going to have more to do with these parables than it's going to be to do with these individual markers. He shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, to the end of the earth for the other. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. You shall not this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and the earth may pass away, but my words will not pass away. So, this is all going to happen before all of you die. To those people at the time, 2,000 years ago. And it's going to end the world. But what I'm saying to you right now will continue, and people will still know it. It's a prophecy fulfilled right there. So, if any man shall say, if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Wow. Huh. That's something. So this could be implying that we're headed for a nuclear war now. But it could also be implying the worldwide war that happened then, that destroyed ancient civilization. And when you're talking about the burning of that many lands, not only would you be unable to see the sun and the moon, but stars, your ancestors, would be kind of pissed. And much like during the period of 2011 and 2012 leading up to this thing that we were all expecting and whatever, it might have seemed like the stars themselves had become UFOs and had become free-floating and come down to interact with us. And it may even be that they were at this time in open war, because it says the power of heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in the heavens. Now that's all that happened now. But that's not the sign of the Son of Man. The sign of the sign of the Son of Man, as far as I know, is the little whale cloud symbol. That's the sign of Jonas. And that's only if that's meant to be the same thing prophetically as what is mentioned in let's see here. This verse. Then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Power and great glory. Words that I would think the Christ would have very little use for, considering how often he spoke of humility and of the fact that his power was not of this world, and that people who believed on miracles already had their reward before them and would only believe for a little while. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his... You know what, I'm starting to wonder. Who am I talking to again? Did these people just piss me off? It sounds like something I would say when I'm pissed off. Oh yes, and if William Wallace would hear, he'd consume the English with fireballs from his eyes and bolts of lightning from his arse. I just want to back up here to the beginning of Matthew chapter 24 and see if this happens to be some people who were pissing me off. Let's first pull up the... Where is it? There it is. Chapter 24. Not one stone upon another. Well, I know what kind of mood I was in. I have those moods, don't I? Yeah. Oh, the power just flickered right when I said that. Oh look, there's no storm. Jeez. To the antagonistic little fucker that asked if I could make lightning happen when there wasn't a storm, should probably ask themselves, why wouldn't a storm happen when I desired it to? Every time there has ever been a need for me to speak with thunder, there has been a storm. And well, if you saw that little flicker just then, no storm. Suck it. Oh. Did the inclusion of the mirror in the opening scene of the movie Constantine imply they are aware of the Da Vinci connection? Interesting, isn't it? And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him, for to shew him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, See ye not all these things? Verily, I say unto you, there shall not be one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. See, in Matthew 23, it seems like this is, I'm leaving from somewhere pissed off at this point, so let's go back to 23. And the Jewish leaders try to trap Jesus in 22, and then in 23. Then Jesus spake to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, all therefore whatsoever they bid you observe. And that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. So they keep slaves. It's just like I remember. And one of my favorite verses here, but all their works they do to be seen, they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries, and enlarge the borders of their garment. So that's the headdress, basically. So they got big fancy hats and big fancy robes. Sound familiar? And they love to sit at the uppermost rooms at feasts, and chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But be ye not called Rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven. Neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And who shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. Because you are damned, you don't want anyone else to go to heaven. Sounds like familiar behavior. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses. For you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. Therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation. Yeah, that's pretty shitty. 23 ends, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wing, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth, till ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. I'm just looking for anything that's seems like it stands out like a crucial key to something, because that the whole rest of that would be a lot to read. But it's very interesting, and I do recommend reading it. But yes, suffice to say, quite pissed off. And he sat upon the Mount of Olives, 24:3. The disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered them and said, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars, and rumors of wars. See that ye not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. And ye shall be hated of all nations, for my name's sake. And many shall be offended, and betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. And then the end shall come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight not be in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall great tribulation, such as not seen since the beginning of the world to this time, nor shall ever be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Getting a little incoherent, detecting kind of midrashy. And right as I'm detecting some midrash, it's, then if any man shall see, right here, then we're here. Okay. So, this is all said in that time frame that these things should be happening. So, wars and rumors of wars. People coming saying that they are the Messiah. Alright, now take this into context and to who he's speaking to. People that are coming to say, I am King of the Jews, I am the Son of David, I am going to lead these people, Israel, to freedom from their oppressors. These wars are not going to affect you. Nation shall rise against nation. Be troubled not. Blah, blah, blah. Nation shall rise against nation. Kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places. All kinds of shit going to be happening all over the place. So don't worry about the wars. But then, the real bad stuff's going to happen. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Sounds like the martyrs to me. And this all sounds very familiar in repetition of this time, too. Then shall many be offended and betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. That sounds like now, really. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So Rome would convert to Christianity, basically. During a time of false prophets. Peter and Paul. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by David Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. The image of the beast. Revelation 13:14, which will be set up by the Antichrist and his, quote, false prophet, Matthew 24:11, as an object of enforced global worship. Oh, okay. Uncle Henry being a little Uncle Henry on this one. This sounds like Claudius Nero. Then let Judea, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Once this guy stands in the holy place, in the temple, get the fuck. Then shall be great tribulation, after a tribulation. Then, here, and we have a rule that exists outside of time: wheresoever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. And that's related to the lightning coming out of the east and shining into the west, implying that the eagles come from the east unto the west because of this light or lightning. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, so after Nero hunts down all the Christians, you have the Dark Ages. So this isn't a bunch of like legalistic stuff that determines whether or not I'm me? Oh, fancy that. Anyways. Oh, and then a parable about preserving oil. Yay. Okay. I'm just going to leave it there then. Oi. Getting a little bit hungry. So anything to add? You got any questions, Mr. Conway? Looks like you're the only one hanging out this morning. And looks like it's actually morning now. 6:20. So I suppose I will go ahead and call it a broadcast. You know, I've said from the beginning that I don't care if I'm crazy, because the value of the knowledge seems to be irrespective of that. And if it takes being crazy to know what I know, even to the point of sacrificing myself at the altar of societal embarrassment and tabooism or whatever, so be it. But one thing I can't do is apologize for who I might be. Because the fact of the matter is, if I am who I am, then I should be having this struggle. I should be wanting to deny myself. And that says a lot about the form that you should be expecting. But if you don't believe who I am, and you don't take my warnings seriously, then it's pretty obvious that when my warnings come true, that you failed a test. But if I'm not who I am, and somehow my warnings came true anyways, wouldn't you still have failed the same test? Anyways. Alright, little brother. Whoever's watching this in the future, and of course Mr. Conway, if you don't mind, click that like button, and please continue to support our efforts here, you know, namely mine, but you know, my wife's got quite a struggle she's going through right now, and we appreciate the help that y'all been given, and suffice to say, we're still dependent on it, and that's all I'm gonna fucking say. But do share this video, predicated to anyone who you know who might have already scoffed at me for being me. Sorry for being me. Sorry for wanting to save your lives and all that good stuff. Yeah, being sarcastic. But I'm going to keep doing everything I can to figure out a way forward. And every day that I spend that I can't find an effective plan of action, I at least try to provide more wisdom that people can find useful in making the case that this is real, this is happening, this is our last chance as a people to get it together. And if anybody thinks that, I have to come back to tell them to do it, they should be allowed to know that I've come back and I'm telling them, get your shit together. Start taking care of this place. And do all those other things I've already said. Otherwise, things are going to get pretty bad. I'm not here to fulfill something that's already been fulfilled. I'm here for similar reasons, to do similar things, by similar means, and with the exact same frame of mind, the exact same personality, and the exact same understanding, relevant to the time. That's all I can really say. Hope y'all enjoyed the program. Don't forget to click that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. All that good YouTuber type stuff. Peace.
ain't begging no more. Thank you.